What was the weirdest slash oddest slash most shocking thing you found when clearing out the things of someone who passed on? My grandmother ran a business that handled estate sales, so as a kid, I spent summers clearing out dead strangers' homes. Although I wasn't the one who found the human skeleton in someone's attic, I heard the story firsthand. Attic job starts normally enough, albeit more cluttered than some because this house had been in the family for several generations. So they're working back through recent junk, Christmas lights, etc., to more interesting stuff, vintage clothes, and hoping to find some antiques towards the back. Then they open one trunk and eek! Whose corpse is this? Well, after a few rounds of queries with the heirs who hired us, we learned that the person whose estate we were selling had a great-great-grandpa who had been a doctor and practiced out of his home, as was the custom in the early 1900s. At the time, plastic models didn't exist, so doctors kept real skeletons mounted in their office. But then the doctor had died and none of his heirs knew what to do about the second-hand skeleton, and neither did their heirs, and so forth for a few generations, until my family found itself face-to-face with a literal skeleton in the closet. Luckily, they decided not to auction it off, so the skeleton was donated to a medical school to put to its intended scientific purpose. I'm personally surprised that someone in the family knew why there was a skeleton at all. I feel like after that much time, it wouldn't be completely unexpected for someone to just be like, I don't know, there's a skeleton in our attic? That's creepy. But no, they seem to know. It's like, oh yes, the great-great-grandfather was a doctor and the skeleton was his. It's either that or they made up the story just to cover their tracks. We now have a Discord. Check out the server in the link in the description. Story 2. My dad died suddenly, and my mom and I were going through his old pictures when we stumbled upon an old photo, from like the early 80s, of a woman holding a little boy smiling. My mom and I didn't know who they were, so we called my big sister, my dad's daughter from his first marriage. And she said, "Oh, that's Brian. The son Dad gave up for adoption when he was a teenager. Turns out my dad had, maybe, gotten his girlfriend pregnant when he was 16, 17, and they gave him up for adoption. In the 20 years my folks were together, Dad never told Mom or me about Brian because he wasn't sure if Brian was actually his in the first place." Story 3. My boyfriend's ex-boyfriend got really into bidding on abandoned storage lockers. It was during the time when Storage Wars was a really big thing, and people didn't realize it was effectively trash reality TV. One of the ones he got a lead on was from a woman who had just died, who had been maintaining her husband's locker after he disappeared. Ex-boyfriend found out about it early since he'd sort of known her, and knew that she kept a ton of antiques. He was able to get it relatively cheap, and found that the locker contained a large amount of World War II military junk, sports memorabilia, and the lost husband. He'd had various issues, and nobody thought to check the locker when he wandered off. It turned into a bit of a kerfuffle for the people who managed the storage, and was the last time ex-boyfriend ever did any storage bidding. I'm assuming the ex-husband was alive here, yes? If so, how? This seems insane, impossible, I don't know. Did he just like wander in there before they did the auction and then they started moving? I guess they don't move the locker, but like everyone started lining up in front of it and be like, we're going to bid on this. I know, $50, do I hear $50? And this person's just in there like, oh no, oh God, oh no. I feel like at that point you should just bang on the inside and scare the hell out of everyone. Story 4. I can't really go into much detail because I'm not a lawyer and I don't want to get in trouble, but basically some documents implicating some public figures of child intimate offenses back in the 1970s/80s. We passed it all over to the police and it was investigated. Some of it made the news, but it was just allegations. I'm not sure if there was much more than circumstantial evidence. Still, it was pretty chilling to find a file accusing various relatively high-profile officials engaging in some pretty dodgy stuff. Most of them are dead now anyway, so I doubt that anything would ever come of it. Pretty sad if any of it was true. I suspect we'll never know. On a more personal note, we found a little black book when we cleared out my granddad's house, of payments he was making to another family. I think we suspect it was possibly an illegitimate child that he had sometime back in the 1950s. He definitely had an affair sometime after the war, so it sort of fits. Would be really interesting to track them down and find out more. But given that the payments stopped back in the 90s, my mom and uncle decided that they didn't want to chase it up and risk unsettling somebody's life. Who knows, it could have been blackmail for something. We have literally no idea. It's a secret the old man took to his grave. Oh wow, that first one is crazy. It would be nuts if something were to happen like that now, right? I'm sure everyone would be investigated thoroughly and be put away, right? Story 5. Buddy's dad was, Well, he spoke Old German and only when angry. He was a hoarder, and a bunch of people helped clean out his place when he died. He had newspapers dating back to the 60s, which was a little cool. But the main issue was that he had an entire room of Nazi stuff. Flags, books, posters, even a few little toy figurines. We donated the toys, some posters, and a few of the books to a few different museums around North America, since we knew some of it was worth preservation on the historical context. We burned everything the museums didn't want, which was kind of fun, honestly. Museums wanted all the real, authentic stuff. Didn't care if it was just knockoff crap made post-war that we burned. I would never burn actual history, no matter how evil, so don't worry. Virtually every museum with a section for this stuff was filled this way too. Chatted with the different heads, and it's something that happens way more often than people think. One dead guy's family was actually already sending in a copy of one of the posters at the same time. For a perspective on how frequently this happens, one dead guy's family was actually already sending in a copy of one of the posters at the same time. Story 6. Not clearing things out for the deceased per se, but being there when they passed. I had been a paramedic for a couple of years, and got called out for a chest pain on an older guy I had taken to the hospital several times in the past. A nice man and a bit eccentric. He had no family that we knew of, but lived with 2 German shepherds that he absolutely loved. He had portraits of them in his living room, dog toys all over the place, and his house was decorated with all manner of German shepherd knickknacks. By the time we got to his house, he was in full cardiac arrest. The phone still in his hand with the 911 operator still on the line. We did CPR there in his living room for over 40 minutes, but never got a pulse back. I remember draping a sheet over his body right after we ceased efforts and pronounced him dead, then looking up to see his 2 dogs watching us intently through the sliding glass door. Not barking or panicking, just watching. For some reason, that sight nearly brought me to tears, and I started thinking of how these dogs had just now lost their person that absolutely adored them. From their perspective, he just lied down on the floor one day, and a bunch of strangers came to the house, and then he disappeared and never came back. And they would never understand why. I'd had rough calls prior to that, but that was the first one I remember affecting me pretty profoundly. Story 7. Not odd in that we knew it was all gonna be there, but a friend's brother died and he was known to be a big gun enthusiast. I helped my brother and some friends catalog the place. It wasn't a very big house, but when all was counted, there were around 2,400 guns in it. There was nearly no place to sit in the house with all the gun safes and storage locker systems he had. They were in every room. Just amazing. Sold a lot of them and auctioned the rarest ones. It was kinda just surreal. Story 8. My dad struggled with alcoholism my whole life. He quit cold turkey when I turned 16. He relapsed a couple of times, but mostly stayed sober for the remainder of his life. In my late 20s, he started getting progressively more sick. After our town was hit by a tornado, he was admitted to a hospital for a month straight. When he returned, things were a little bit like normal again. He had a cancer diagnosis out of the blue, but everything else was mostly the same. There was one day when he seemed drunk, but he swore up and down to me that he wasn't. But it seemed like the old days again, just the way he was acting. That seemed to clear up though, no big deal. A few months later, he passed away at home with me and my wife nearby. In the following days, we cleaned out his PT Cruiser convertible. I got into the back area and noticed the taillight assembly was askew. I took it off, and there I found a half-empty bottle of gut rock vodka. I just laughed and laughed and laughed. I mean, the guy had cancer. I would have been okay with him getting sauced a couple of times, but maybe it was just a little more fun to hide it from me. Story 9. My mother had a coworker who was the friendliest guy ever. He was about 70, extremely nice, loved the beach, and was openly gay, but didn't date much in his later years. He passed away from a heart attack and had no living family. They went to his home, found care for his dog, then attended the funeral a few days later. In his will, he asked several close friends and old coworkers to take what they wanted of his things, as the bank would foreclose on the home. He only moved in like 3 years prior. There were a few things specifically listed to go to certain people, but everything else was up for grabs. It was all going fine. They opened drawers in the bathroom and found weed. The group of 5 or so people giggled. Then, they went into the bedroom. They opened his nightstand drawer. Blue pills. Lots of them. Dong rings. 2 fake dongs. Beads. A little metal stick thing. It was too embarrassing to tell my sister what that was for. Old adult content on Polaroids. A ball gag. A few phone numbers written on paper. And oh yeah, more dong rings. I think there were close to like 10. Dude was apparently a frisky fanatic even at 70. He definitely left one big last impression on those who were close to him. Man knew how he wanted to live, and boy did he live it. Good for him. 10 though? What do you do with 10? Quite frankly, I don't even really get what they're for. Maybe I'm too vanilla for that. I don't know. Story 10. Me and my best friend were clearing out his father's belongings when he passed away. His father had been divorced for 15 years and my best friend was his only living relative. He was in a bad shape in his final few years, alcohol abuse, heart problems, and had been living in a one-room flat for about 10 years. His bedroom was full of all different sizes of bottles, glass and plastic, and more than half were filled with pee. The room smelled so bad my friend vomited as soon as we entered. He used the room as a toilet, bin, and God knows what else. But his toilet was fully functioning. We didn't understand. Even though it was a small flat, it took us 5 days to clear it. On the last day, the carpet was removed and we noticed one of the floorboards was loose. We lifted it and slowly all the rest in the room. Inside the linings were 20-pound notes. The old paper ones, except one bundle, totaling about 140,000 pounds. On one of the bundles, I believe the first one placed there, it said my friend's name, followed by inheritance. We were stunned. My friend's dad wasn't rich and he was terrible with money, but he had obviously stashed this money for some time, as the 20-pound polymer note entered circulation in 2020, and all but one bundle were the old paper versions. I'll never forget the smell and also never forget the look on the lady's face at the bank when he deposited the old notes. There was a delay in him getting the money as the bank launched an investigation due to the scale of the notes. But nothing ever came of it, and he got the money in his account in roughly a month. Hey, maybe his dad was just a hardcore gamer. Real gamers use the pee bottle, you know what I'm talking about. That's a joke, guys. Don't do that. Please, don't do that. Story 11. Over a decade ago, I was a librarian. We had a frequent patron whose son was fighting in Iraq. She was super old school, very religious, but a really kind lady. Unfortunately, her son was downed in action. A few months later, she'd been slowly sorting through his stuff, and one day she brought us a box of books that were obviously her son's childhood books. The staff sat around after she left, heartbroken and looking at these books her son had grown up with. The son that we all knew was now gone. It was part of my job to sort through the donated books and pick out which ones to sell at the book sale and which ones to toss. So I'm going through this guy's books and checking their condition. I picked up one book that was a really thick novel, but it felt light. Curious, I opened the front cover and it was hollowed out. Inside was a baggie of old weed. Policy said I was supposed to call the police, but then it might get back to his mom, and she's not the kind that would have been okay with that. Probably why it was so well hidden. I didn't want to tell my boss since he would feel obligated to report it or something. So I stuck it in my pocket, didn't tell a soul, and chucked it in a dumpster across town, along with the book, since I probably couldn't sell it anyway and that weed was too old to smoke. Never did tell anyone, except you, Reddit. OP, you just did that brave young man a solid. Wherever he is right now, whatever the afterlife happens, he's there, and he's like, yeah, OP, that's a homie. Oh, and he's also probably smoking a joint, let's be real. Story 12. My gran died about 10 years ago. She had Alzheimer's. Apparently, if people with dementia speak a second language, they switch into it at times without realizing. My gran switched to fluent French unexpectedly. We always knew she spoke French. She and my granddad used it so that their kids couldn't understand them when they wanted to talk about adult things. Hence my aunt later becoming a French teacher, but that's another story. When we went through her stuff, it turned out she had been recruited by French nuns when she was a teenager and went off to France, having lived in rural Ireland up to that point. She lived in a convent close to the Swiss border. Fortunately for us, she never became a full nun. Unfortunately for her, this was in 1939. So she got stuck in France for the rest of the war. She never spoke about any of it. The only trace is a little calendar page which she kept inside her pocket copy of The Imitation of Christ. The date was June 6th, 1944, D-Day. Some of my relatives visited the convent later. Turned out the nuns there helped resistance fighters with medical aid and helped people escape into Switzerland, which maybe explains why my gran came back to the UK to become a nurse. I'm a little slow on the uptake, I guess, because I was wondering for a while, to be honest, why being a nun would be unfortunate for OP. Like, what effect does that have on you? Oh, you wouldn't exist. Got it. Story 13. I think this qualifies as shocking, but I would say more infuriating. My mother and father divorced when I was 3. He lived about 30 minutes away and I would visit him on weekends. My father told me many times throughout the years that if something happened to him, I was to get his white box. He showed me the inside. It had some $2 bills, 50-cent coins, and the like. It had his handgun, and it had several packets of unopened baseball cards. His prevailing logic was that these items would likely increase in value, so I should get them and hang on to them until there was such a time that they would be worth it to sell or pass along. My choice. The time came when he passed, and I knew what I needed to do. I was around 16 at the time and certainly didn't have my own car, so I couldn't go immediately, but as soon as I could, I got my mother to take me to his house. Now, I didn't know much about this leading up to his death, but my father had a girlfriend. She lived with him apparently and was not present when I arrived. We called and called, but she never came to let me or anybody else in. She didn't respond until much later. It probably took me a few weeks before I could finally get my hands on my dad's box. And best believe that was my intent, stated and all from the beginning. I made it no secret that that's what I wanted, and it was immensely important to me. After all, that's what he said to do. So weeks after his death, I finally get inside his house. And I swear his house was raided. Anything of apparent value was gone, and it was a mess. Luckily, the box was there. I got my hands on it and the key. So I opened it, and it's strange. Okay, so his handgun was missing. I can kinda see that. I was 16 at the time. Someone may think I'm too young to handle a firearm. The $2 bills and such, gone. It was like $1,000 worth at face value. I'm not happy about this, but I'm not surprised either. The bag of coins was still there. Nice, crappy girlfriend. I was confident it was her by that point. She thought nothing of the coins. Good. This is the part that shocked me. Would you believe this jerk opened all the baseball cards and just left them in there? Didn't take a single one. Just opened the packages and put them back. I hated her already, so I wasn't shocked she stole a firearm and $1,000. Obviously, I'm not happy, but that's not surprising. But who the flying monkey frick opens cards just to devalue them, then puts them back? That's insane to me. Who is that petty to someone you've literally never met? Blows my mind to this day. As someone who's pretty into TCGs, not baseball cards or sports cards or anything, but like Magic and stuff, that's infuriating. OP, I think your dad's ex-girlfriend broke the Geneva Convention. You should pursue legal action. Story 14. I bought my first house last year in an estate sale. The family all lives out of state, but maintained that they would pick up a weird selection of items. The destroyed musty couch was listed, but not the 55-inch TV. They never ended up coming to get anything. I even offered to mail their family photos, and they said no, thank you. So I started going through the house. I feel like I learned who the old owner was. We both grew up in the same state and moved to the one I'm currently in around the same age. Our universities were a 30-minute drive from each other. We both owned the home on our own. We both love dogs. I kind of have a theory she sent my rescue to me. He showed up about a month into owning the house, and he literally checks every box for my ideal dog. I don't believe in that stuff, but I can't help but think. She was an avid collector of art pieces and loved to surround herself with them. Literally. 3-bed, 2-bath, 33 paintings. While I don't collect art, I love her passion, and have my own collections throughout the home now. I guess the weird thing is buying a house from a stranger that I have so much in common with.